Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. This meeting of the Public Pension Oversight Board is called to order. We are going to hold off on approval of the minutes. We need at least one more person for a quorum. So we're going to move right into item 3 on the agenda. Just as soon as we call the roll.
Senator Berg, Senator Carroll, Senator McDaniel, Senator Mills, Senator Neal, Senator Nemes.
Present.
Senator Wilson.
Here.
Representative Bojanowski, Representative Duval, Representative Fleming, Representative Graham. Here. Representative Petrie.
Here.
Representative Pratt, Representative Tipton. Here. Auditor Ball.
Here.
John Hicks. Here. Victor Maddox. Sharon Mattingly. Here. Representative Hale. Senator Higdon.
Here.
Representative Johnson.
Here. So we are just short of a quorum, so we'll take care of the official business as we can do that. So at this point, we're going to move forward to the presentations of the day. Bo, would you like to come forward? And as usual, if you will state your name for the official record.
Absolutely. Name is Bo Craycraft, and I'm the Executive Director over at the Judicial Form Retirement System. It's good to be here today and appreciate the opportunity to share a little bit about our plans. This afternoon, I was asked to provide a short update on just kind of an overview of membership, recent trends. And so that'll include just kind of a look at the total membership over the last 5 years, and then we'll take a deeper dive into our active and retired populations. Before we get into the data, just to really to kind of set the table, just a couple quick notes first. Specifically, when we get into the more focused look at our active and retired populations, for the sake of just trying to be clear and consistent with the information that we share with you all today, I've chosen to pull data from our funding actuarial evaluations. And we only do those every other year. So we were asked to do like a 5-year look back. And in lieu of that, we've just chosen to pull our last 5 biannual or every other year valuations. So our data is a little longer term, but I wanted to give you 5 data points. The second thing is we've tried really hard at JFRS to modernize and digitize as much of the information that we have. But with that said, we're still working on that. We just implemented a new administrative system. We went live 18 months ago. So a lot of our more current data is very easily sortable and sliceable. But as we get out to 8 to 10 years, especially when we start looking at slicing data based on years of service or age, those type of things, it gets a little bit more difficult. I'm very confident in the information from a broad point of view when you look at the total plan. But individual data points, especially with small plans like ours, year to year, sometimes, it's more difficult. So I just wanted to make note of that because in some cases we're looking back all the way to 2015. With that said, the first slide, on slide number 2, is a high-level view and summary of our total membership. The top half of this slide breaks our membership into 3 broad categories: active, which represents those that are currently contributing, making contributions each payroll period. The second column or the second row there is inactive. Those are members who have accrued service with us but are not currently participating or contributing, nor have they started to receive or commenced any benefits. And then lastly, we have retirees. These are folks, and it's actually retirees and beneficiaries. These are folks who are receiving a monthly benefit from one of the 2 plans. The bottom half of the slide, we were asked to just further break down our active membership based on tier of benefit. We really just have 2 basic tiers of benefit. We have the cash balance tier, which represents any members who joined JRP or LRP after January of 2014. Anyone who joined prior to 2014, we just call legacy. There are a couple of, there were some changes in 2008 that adjusted the contribution rate, but the benefits outlined are the same. So you can see as you move left or right, whether it's judicial or legislative, you can see that the cash balance tiers are growing, albeit it's much slower on the judicial retirement plan side. Most of that is due to the fact that turnover is a lot lower there. Terms are 4 to 8 years, and as we'll see when we get into the retired data, we have a lot more folks who accrue 18 to 25 years of service, and so the turnover there is lower. Relative to LRP, where you can see that the cash balance plan actually already outnumber the legacy tier. And the turnover is more evident in LRP. You can see that most notably in the number of inactive accounts. Lastly, we were asked to also include the active to retired ratio. This is something I know we've talked about in meetings prior, specifically with regards to cash flow and the standing and position of our funds. Both of our funds are mature, and when I say mature, that just means the number of recipients outnumber the number of folks contributing. And so in the case of JRP, we're about 2 retirees or 2 recipients to each active contributing member. And when you look over at LRP, it's more like 3 to 1 with regards to that plan. Slides 3 and 4 both take a little bit deeper dive into our active membership. And there's a lot of numbers here, so I apologize. It's hard to pull this amount of data and make it to present it in a manner that is clear, and so I apologize for that. I'll just say that, as you look across both of these plans, and again, these are the last 5 funding valuations, the plans have remained fairly consistent. Average salary has grown, specifically more here recently, which is kind of expected with some of the increments that have been provided. But when you look out at average age, average service credit, and even average, highest to lowest salary of active members, the range and the trend has been fairly consistent. We've also been asked to include some information with regards to career employees. For the purpose of this data, our actuary kind of slices data up in 5-year increments. And so we've chosen to just be consistent. So our career employees is anyone who has accrued 25 or more years of service. So it's not quite the 27 that a lot of the legacy tiers use for eligibility, but 25 plus. And you can see there, as expected, the average salaries are a little bit higher for those who are career employees, as well as the highest and lowest salary. Slide 4 is just a distribution of active salaries as reported either by fiscal year or calendar year. Legislative retirement benefits are calculated on calendar years, full calendar years, so we included the most recently completed, which is 2023. Judicial salaries are set by statute, and they currently range from just over $137,000 for a district judge, up to just about $170,000 for a chief justice. So you can see that their distribution is pretty narrow. There's a few there under that $100,000 band, and that represents some judges that didn't serve a full 12 months during that fiscal year. On the other side, with regards to legislative salaries, the slide that we just reflected earlier reflected an average salary of roughly $42,000. So you can see that the majority of legislators are falling into that band there. And again, we have a few that are partial year participants, and so there's a few salaries below that. Slides 5 and 6 take a similar look at the retired population. So these are folks who are currently receiving a benefit or a monthly allowance. The top half represents all recipients. Again, this includes both retirees and any eligible survivors in the event the member chose a payment option that provided for. Much like the active, again, this is an even busier slide, a lot of numbers, so I apologize. But much like my point on the active side is you continue to see a pretty consistent level of consistency. Average service is almost identical across that longer period of time. And when you look across the average benefit, they're within a range of about 5%. So there's not been a lot of swing. And then when you look at the highest and lowest, they've remained unchanged. Moving down to the bottom half there in career employees, again, 25 years or more. Of course, the average benefit is higher. This is driven, again, the longer someone stays, the more service they accrue, which is a key factor in the equation or the calculation. But also, generally speaking, the final comp also increases as well. And then lastly, this is a distribution similarly to what we showed on the salary side. This is with regards to retirement benefits. And this is based on June 2024 information, our current retiree payroll. You can definitely see a lot more distribution with regards to JRP. There's also quite a few more individuals in that plan. And on the LRP side, almost all of the members fall within one of those first couple of bands. And I'll just note that, any of those members that the further right you get, all of those members, that benefit also includes compensation outside the General Assembly, which creates a few outliers. That was short and sweet, but happy to answer any questions that you may have. And again, appreciate the time.
Thank you, Bo. Any questions from the board other than Chairman Higdon? Please lead us off.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Bo, for that presentation on the legislative retirement plan. I see that we have you have the highest benefit, $154,000, and then the median is about what seems high too, $40,000. How many of those retirements do you have that are over? This just shows the highest. How many of them are over 100,000?
That would be included in this. We have 10 that were in the over 60,000. I think there's 2 that are over the 100.
Those we passed legislation years ago that all those are public record, correct?
Yes, on the legislative side.
Yeah. So we can go see who they are if we need to.
I think you have to request it. I don't know if I'm not sure if it's included on transparency, but it is definitely available via open record request. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
But would it be safe to say for those high numbers, is that more than likely a legislator who finished their legislative career and then moved on into some other service in government, and that might have had an impact on what that number looks like? Absolutely.
It's all cases, it's a legislator who moved either to the executive branch or the judicial branch and took another position. And based on the language, it's a narrow window. So there's not a whole lot of folks that are eligible for that enhanced benefit. But if they meet if their service meets a narrow window of date, then we are permitted to utilize non-legislative salary for the purpose of calculating their benefit. So it's definitely safe to say that, generally speaking, I think the highest salary that you see on the legislative side is, for, a leadership position is somewhere in that 60,000 range. So to get a benefit above 100,000, you would need a final comp above 100,000.
All right. Thank you. Senator Wilson, you have a question?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, I do. Bo, thank you for today. And my question is, I know some of these retirees are drawing health care benefits, but I don't see anything in here related to that.
Yeah, we weren't asked to provide that, I don't believe, but definitely anyone who's a recipient of a monthly allowance is eligible for some level of health insurance benefit. Depending on the tier of benefit, legacy members, it's a percentage of pay based on the years of service. It ranges anywhere from 25% to 100% of a premium that is set by the board on an annual basis. I don't have that information memorized. We do have a large group of a lot of our recipients are participating in health insurance, and there's also for our legacy members, there's also some option for dependent subsidies as well. So that's definitely a benefit that many have taken.
Well, I'd appreciate it if we could see that coming up next time around.
Sure.
See what's being paid out on those. Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Tipton, do you have a question or a comment?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Bo, I always appreciate your presentation. Looks like there are 97 active members in the legislative system right now.
Yep.
We have 138 legislators. That means that there are 41 legislators, so I did my math right, that are either in the KPPA or the teachers' retirement system. Would that be correct?
Yeah, I think we actually have a couple who are retired reemployed, and
Okay.
so they are not
I
participating.
understand.
But generally speaking, correct.
Just so people understand that as a legislature, you're required to be in one of the systems.
Unless you're
Retired.
already retired and you voluntarily elect not to join LRP, then you default to KERS, and
Okay.
then you're subject to retired or reemployed laws.
Yeah. Looking at page 3 of your report, 2015, the average salary was $42,490. 2023, it was $42,894. So not a whole lot of difference there in average salary. But these are only legislators in the LRP, but you would assume the other legislators' salaries are going to be pretty consistent with that.
They should be, with the most recent salary increments that were passed a couple of years ago. I think the language, the increments didn't accrue to folks who were already elected.
Sure.
It was a kind of a next election
Sure.
cycle. So it has created some kind of dispersion within some of your newer legislators versus some that were
Sure.
already in the plan. But of course, yeah, you're seeing a slight increase.
I believe that would have went in effect January 1 or 23, I believe.
Yeah. So I know, like, for some of our folks who are up for re-election on the Senate side this year, they're still kind of at a salary reflected from 4 years ago.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
And Senator Mills.
Bo, I'm over here behind the pole. I just want to concur with what Representative Tipton was saying. When I came in 2017, I tried to not be in the retirement system and ended up in KERS. And we even went through the legislative process of trying to figure out how to give us the ability. There were several that year that wanted to turn down the retirement, but we all have to be in it and pay into it.
All right, both, thank you very much. And I want to say before you get away, pretty short warning order on this one as far as trying to get this information together. So thank you for the effort. I appreciate it.
No problem.
And Ryan, if you want to come on up, and while you're doing that, let's go ahead and I would request a motion. I've got a motion to approve the minutes and a second. All in favor? All opposed? Minutes are approved. And with that administrative interlude, Ryan, if you're ready, please introduce yourself for the record and anyone else you might have with you. And the floor is yours.
Ryan Barrow, KPPA Executive Director. You guys want to go ahead and...
I'm Rebecca Adkins. I'm the KPPA Deputy Executive Director.
Hi, Erin Surratt. I'm the Executive Director of the Office of Benefits.
Similar to Bo's disclosures, we'd like to do some as well. We do admit, given the 5 different pension plans and the different tiers, this is a lot of information. So we're bringing what we are asked. We're trying to distill it down as best we can and not read numbers off a slide. Happy to go into any detail on any of this. Last is these are for 24 preliminary and unaudited information. Still working on vals, still working on our audits. So thought we'd start off with the different tiers, this 3-tier structure. Starting with tier 1, I want to kind of focus on the timelines because that helps track some of the trends and make sense of that. So tier 1 is really before September 2008. So that is a duration of time. You can anticipate most people will retire if eligible. So do the math on that. Tier 2 is really just a 5-year window. So you'll see that represented in smaller numbers from 08 to 2013. And then January 1st, 2014, the hybrid cash balance plan came in. So tier 1 to tier 2, there was kind of the similar structure on the defined benefit. Benefit factors changed and structurally. And then there was some retirement eligibility changes that went from 1 to 2, and then the 3 kind of had a new hybrid cash balance structure. So on this, I'm a visual learner, so I'll start with the graph on the far right. In terms of total members, you can start with that 433, and then that we've represented that across the different plans. So CRS non-hazardous is on the far left there. So that is the majority of the members that we serve with KERS non-hazardous second. So we're going to kind of focus more on those two plans than try to go across all three. And then the metrics, we're using the same that Bo did. On the left-hand side, you can kind of see the active to retired. And that's something I remember working on the pensions in Lexington, and that was a trend that had a big impact. So it's something that we track as well. So kind of looking at the three different tiers and the focusing on the 5-year ask that we had, you can kind of see, and it even surprised a number of us on let's focus on the top, just the active members. The tier 3 has drastically increased. And you can kind of see the tier 1 that's in blue kind of makes sense. Those members are kind of getting eligible to retire. So you would see some decline in that number. And then the tier 2 are not quite there. So they're somewhat uniform across. The inactives, it didn't really surprise me that the tier 3 is so much higher. You can think of people entering into state government service, or CRS service, and then kind of exiting after a period of time. So that kind of makes sense with the same trend that we see on the tier 2. And then for those retired, makes sense. Really, tier 1 has reached kind of the ability to retire, and we see kind of similar things on tier 2 and tier 3 at the bottom. Obviously, overall, tier 1 is the biggest, but we have seen a large increase in the last couple years with the tier 3. So that's the CRS side. And the other one that we're going to focus on is the KRS non-hazardous. We don't see quite the volume in the tier 3 that we saw on the CRS, but we still see some of the similar trends in terms of active. You can see that tier 3 line has increased drastically with the same trend on the tier 1, kind of as they're eligible to retire. Not as much in inactive tier 3. But we still see that upward trajectory, the upward sloping line with the tier 1 kind of the same. And then the retired is the same story as you saw on the CRS side. So those are the membership trends over the last 5 years that we wanted to talk about.
Okay, I'm going to present the active member payroll data. Again, a lot of information. I won't speak through all the numbers, just give some high-level points, but if you have any questions, let me know. This first slide represents the average member age and average service in years. Looking at the two largest plans, CERS non-has, the average age is 47, with average service being 8.6 years. And then KERS non-has, the average age is 45 and a half years, with 10.7 years of service. Okay, looking at some of the actuarial data for our...
Hey, Aaron, I'm going to just interrupt real quick. Just see if I can do my math here. The average age 47 and average service. So we have, and like as an example, CERS, the average start age is in their 30s. Is that what I'm seeing?
Yes.
Because I don't know. I guess I didn't expect that. So
yeah, that would be.
Just want to make sure I'm reading what I think I'm reading.
Yeah, that would be true. Yes, that would be some of the later start in the age 30 something age range. So.
Right. Thank you. Sorry to interrupt. Continue.
That's okay. Okay, so speaking to the actuarial data for the CERS active population, we're looking at total payroll, average salary, average age, and average years of service credit. Looking in the left-hand box, that's the non-hazardous plan. What I would say, you can see all of the numbers. The annual payroll has increased about 22%. Over the last 5 years, and the annual average pay is up about 23% over the last 5 years. The average age and the average years of service credit have remained pretty flat. And then looking at the KERS non-hazardous, the box on the top left-hand corner, the annual payroll is increased about 34% and annual average pay about 31% over the last 5 years. And then again, the average age and service have remained pretty flat. And then if we look at the box on the right side, that's the state police system. And of course, you see a pretty significant jump in the annual payroll and annual average pay. We know that those pay scales for the state police, the troopers, were increased pretty significantly in the last few years. Okay, and then I will, if there's no questions, I'll hand it over to Rebecca.
I'm going to talk to you about the retiree payroll trends. So move it to the next one. You're right. Okay, this is total payroll over that 5-year period. So we went up from a total of $2.1 billion in 2020 to a total of $2.3 billion in 2024. So $2.3 billion in dollars back into the state. 92% of it comes back into the Commonwealth. Every year we have a SAFR, this summary annual financial report. You can find it online, or we send you all copies of this in January, generally speaking. And you can see a breakdown county by county of that money, and the impact to the counties that you all serve. K, non-hazardous is the top blue line at the top. The rest of these are going to follow. There's a little legend in the upper right corner. So color is going to tell you what system we're looking at, although we're going to focus on C, non-hazardous, and K, non-hazardous. The very top line is KERS non-hazardous. Between 2020 and 24, overall payroll increased 1.7%. CERS non-hazardous is the second line there. You would expect them to have the largest payrolls. They're the largest systems. That makes sense. State police is at the bottom. It's the smallest system. But CERS non-hazardous increased 15.7% in those 5 years. Moving to the next page. This is the worst page to look at. My apologies. All of this is my fault. But I think the idea, you guys asked for final comp, years of service, and benefit amount. When you look at the formula for Tier 1 and Tier 2, you multiply final comp times years of service, and you get the benefit amount. So this gives you an opportunity to look at those holistically. So upper left is final comp. KERS non-hazardous is up 3.7%. CERS non-hazardous is the bottom red line. That's up 7%. But CERS, about 80% of CERS is school boards, and they don't have the same salary that a lot of other folks in KERS non-hazardous do. So their final comps are generally lower. That's why they're the line at the bottom. Years of service has been pretty flat from 2020 to 2024. CERS non-hazardous is the only one that's increased at all. The others have gone down, but very slightly. And then in the bottom left, we're looking at total benefit accounts. The bottom one, the red one, CERS non-hazardous, is up 4.5%, but we saw an increase in their final comp and their total service increased. So you're going to expect benefit amounts to increase for those guys. KERS non-hazardous is down by 1%. Their final comp, the upper left, was up by 3.7%, but their service was actually down just a little bit. So that's kind of how those things relate to each other with the formula. In the bottom right, you have, you guys asked for minimum pay and maximum pay in those years. The minimum pay is tiny. We looked at these guys, their Social Security adjustment options. So they pretty much lost all of their payment when they started Social Security. These were their options. They have 20 plus options to choose from when they choose a benefit account type at retirement, and they choose what's best for them and their families. So, but that's why they're so tiny in the end. The large ones, interestingly, the one in KERS, that's the blue part slightly on the left, and the red is CERS non-hazardous. Both of those maximums, both of those individuals had 42 years of service and more than $200,000 in final comp. So these were expensive jobs. They had nice pay. Mm-hmm.
Probably should have asked this of everybody, but we deal with averages. Do you happen to know the mean numbers by any chance?
We did not look at mean. I think that's an interesting question, but
yeah,
no,
I think
we did
we'll
not look at it.
probably want that answer for the next meeting, just if you want to just make a note.
Okay.
And Senator Higdon, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you all. I guess looking at that, the minimum pay of 12 cents and $3.84, you actually send out that every month to somebody?
Well, the 12 cents, we actually looked him up, and he should have been zero. He should have gone to zero. But yes, there is no limit at that point right now for us. So the $3.84 gets, most of them are not actual checks. Checks would be far more expensive, but a direct deposit into some account, yes.
Couldn't we work something out where we pay those folks off and eliminate some work at the at retirement system and wouldn't cost us a lot of money?
Right now, we don't have anything. We had some conversations when looking at this data, some of those things. But I will say, for some of these lower benefits, when we talk about the Social Security adjustment option, sometimes they do go to a $0 benefit when they turn age 62. However, in order for a retiree to continue their health insurance coverage, they have to be receiving a monthly benefit payment. So in some instances like this, it allows them to continue to receive their health insurance coverage to get that small monthly payment.
Well, thank you, because it doesn't look so bad when you explain it that way. The 207,000 max pay and the 178, what type of jobs would they be? Any idea? Or it's just a number for you all?
I could not tell that when I was looking. I'm sorry. I should have had
That's okay.
Aaron's group look at it.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I guess just one more thought on that, on these low numbers, the 384. Is that probably pretty fair to say that that's a low number of your service individual as well?
It could be, yes. It could be for some people. And also, in our plans too, some people may have service in CERS and KERS and retire with reciprocity. One has more service than the other, those types of things. But these are looking at individual benefits in those plans.
Well, thank goodness this process isn't complicated, right? Senator Nemeth, do you have a question, sir?
Yes, it's a little bit off, but I was just asked in the hallway, is there a 6-month moratorium on getting another job if you're in a retirement system or transferring to another retirement system?
No, are you speaking to retired reemployed?
Yes.
Is that your question? So there can be no prearranged agreement prior to retirement to return to employment with a participating employer. If there's no prearranged agreement, when a member retires, they have to sit out for 1 calendar month, not 30 days. If the month has 31 days, they have to sit out the full 31 days, and then they can return to employment.
Is that
for any positions
to get unemployment or to get back into the? In other words, if you're a teacher, a retired teacher, and you want to go into bookkeeping at the county clerk's office.
Yeah. So that, what I've just stated, is specific to the plans administered by KPPA. Those retired reemployed laws. So if a person retires, they cannot, and they sit out the 1 month, they can go back to work as much as they would like. They will not earn a second retirement account.
Okay.
Just a thought on that, just to clarify, that is KERS's process, right?
Yes, those are for the plans administered by KPPA.
It's TRS, if I remember right, their system, their process is a little different.
Yeah, they would need to speak to those.
Just want to be careful about that.
Can I ask?
Any other questions from the board so far? Yes, sir.
I just want to follow up on what you just said. So when they come back, they're not able to go back into the system, but they are able to go into deferred, if they have a deferred comp of some kind of system like that. Yeah. They can still address the issue of having something in regards to the will of the retirement system not being able to put in there.
It is my understanding that they can participate in deferred comp.
I just wanted to make sure that was clear.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, sir. And Representative Tipton, you have a question or comment? Nope. Okay.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, over here.
Oh, hi. Please go ahead.
Quick question.
Sure.
On the minimum maximum pay for KRS non-hazardous, you said that the $207,000 was for someone who earned over $200,000. Do you know how much over 200, and where do we see the form? Where can we find the formula that would tell us how you got to that number? Because obviously, if it's 201,000, you know, he's making more than 100% of his salary. If it's 401,000, it's you know, it's 50%.
So here's the benefit formula that we showed here. What it doesn't show is the benefit factor that would have been used specifically and it's a tier 1 person. We do have the exact final comp. I don't remember what that is exactly, but we do know that the person retired with over 40 years of service. So that makes a significant difference on the benefits being paid.
Yeah, and to be clear, we just didn't want to bring a lot of specific information to identify one number on that. So it wasn't like we didn't think about that information, but we just want to be careful with that that information about a specific member's account.
Thank you for letting us interrupt. If you want to keep going, I know you're not through the slides yet.
Well, we have another fun page here. Again, we're looking at final comp in the upper left, total years of service in the upper right, with benefit amount in the bottom left. This is for, this is an interesting view that we really haven't looked at very much before. So instead of looking at systems and tiers, we're looking at retirees. So if it's the yellow line, it's all retirees. If it's the brown line, it is the subset of retirees that are considered career retirees. So career retirees are, if they're non-hazardous, they're 27 years, and if they're hazardous, it's 20 years. Of those three, CERS non-hazardous is on the left, and KERS non-hazardous is on the right. At the bottom of both final comp and for CERS non-hazardous years of service is all retirees. Then we're also looked at new retirees, meaning the people who retired during the fiscal year that it's being reported. We also looked at new career retirees. So new retirees in the fiscal year, but also having 27 or 20 years of service. So that's the colors that you're looking at. And it is a little tough to see. I hope yours is better than mine. In general, for final comp, new career retires are the highest, which makes sense. They've worked most recently, salaries are moving up, they have the highest final comp. The lowest is all retirees. To me, it's interesting that career retirees and new retirees are getting really close together. And I think that's kind of shows you the length of some of our data. Some of our retirees have been retired for a lot of years. So they were not making very much money. And so new retirees who don't have 27 years of service are making as much money now as folks who had career pieces earlier. I just thought it was an interesting revelation out of this. In the bottom right, we have all of that in a standard crosstab for you. There's also an appendix to this presentation that we are not going to talk about that has a whole lot more data if you're just dying to look at more of this. I think it's interesting. I've spent several hours on it so far, so. Okay.
Yeah, and just another plug for the annual financial report. If you didn't get enough today, look forward to that in January. I think it's a great report. Before I started KPBA, I used it, and I think it's one of the best reports we put out.
I think we got one more page.
Okay, sorry.
This is the bandwidth. So this is all 5 plans. CERS non-hazardous on the far left, KERS non-hazardous in the middle in blue. This is people making less than $20,000, 20 to 40, 40 to 60, 60 to 80, 80 to 100, and more than $100,000 in their retirement. So this is talking about their retirement benefits. Overall, 67% of our retirees make less than $20,000 a year. If you look at who's making $40,000 or less, that's 90% of our retirees. We have 188 who make $100,000 or more in their retirement. And again, we looked at some of those salaries. Their final comp was significant. The number of years of service they worked were significant. Are there any questions? That, I think, is the last page.
Any questions or comments from the board? Well, thank you to all three of you, and thank you to your staff. Again, we'll try to say this all 3 times, but short short amount of time and a lot of data, and we thank you. We'll digest this. We'll probably have some more questions next month, but we appreciate what you've given us.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
And last but not least. And for the record, sir, and then the floor is yours.
Good afternoon. Bo Barnes, Deputy Executive Secretary and General Counsel for the Teachers Retirement System. I've been asked to provide membership and payroll data as well on behalf of TRS along the same parameters that were discussed earlier. So with that, we'll begin. First, this is membership data, 5-year data for the last 5 years. I'm going to focus on the column to the far right, 2024. I will note that for 2024, these numbers are preliminary and then audited, but ought to be pretty close. And you can see the top row there is contributing members. Those are individuals who contributed to TRS in each one of those 5 years. And you can see the numbers are fairly consistent. We had 2021 where COVID, an anomaly. But other than that, the numbers are fairly consistent, growing slightly over that period of time. The middle row, non-contributing, this is the one that surprised us a little bit, and that is because this represents individuals who did not make contributions in those years. So we had 74,383 individuals who did not make contributions in 2024 who have accounts with TRS. They have money with TRS, but for some reason they were not making contributions or working in 2024. And most of our members are teachers, of course. So these are largely certified teachers with teaching degrees who have taught but have left the classroom for some reason. And it represents really sort of it's just a large pool of one-time teachers who potentially may, some of them, return to the classroom, but have not yet, or did not in 2024 and the other corresponding years here. And of that 74,383, over 56,000 are under age 60. Over 40,000 are under age 50. Over 22,000 are under age 40. And over 6,000, about 6,500, are under the age of 30. So some fairly young folks there who got out of the profession for some reason. Next, these are the different account types at TRS. We have 4, and your account is determined by the date at which you established your membership in TRS. Our first account type is TRS-1, and that's for members who joined the system before July 1st, 2002. Then we have TRS-2. That's for individuals who became members of the retirement system on or between July 1st, 2002 and June 30th, 2008. And the notable differences between TRS-2 and TRS-1 is that with TRS-2, you have a sort of a tiered retirement factor, and that for your first 10 years of service, you have a retirement factor of 2.0. After you have 10 or more years of service, all years convert to a retirement factor of 2.5%. So someone retiring with 30 years of service has a retirement factor of 75% applied to their final average salary. Also with TRS-2, the requirements for maximum contributions towards health insurance were increased. We provided tiers. Before there were 4 tiers. You got 25% of the maximum contribution TRS would make with 5 years, 50% with 10 years, 75% with 15 years, and 100% with 20 years. Now it's much more tiered. For the first 5 years, you get 5%, and then ultimately, if you do get 27 years of service, and you get the maximum contribution that we'll make towards that retiree's health insurance. TRS 3, that's for individuals who became members on or between July 1st, 2008 and December 31st, 2021. The difference between TRS 3 and TRS 2, TRS 3 provide even more tiers. So, for example, that first 10 years is not valued at 2.0%, it's valued at 1.7%. 10 to 20 years is 2.0%, and eventually, if you get 26 years of service, your retirement factor for all years is worth 2.5%. Also, TRS-3 members are required to have 15 years of service before they're eligible for any payment towards their health insurance cost. And then also with TRS-3, sick leave days, that lump sum payment that districts may pay their retiring teachers for their unused sick days that is then applied, as final average salary for retirement calculation purposes. The number of days that can be used for retirement, not for payment by the school district, but for retirement, are capped at 300. TRS-4, our newest account type, for individuals who become members on or after January 1st, 2022. So a lot of differences between TRS-4 and TRS-3, and I'm just going to hit the highlights, but there are many. TRS-4 provides both a retirement annuity and a supplemental savings account. Also, no one can retire in TRS-4 who is under age 57. You have to be age 57 before you're eligible for retirement. There is no ability to use lump sum payments by districts to incorporate that in your final average salary for retirement calculation purposes, so no sick leave. And then also, and this is the most important thing about TRS-4, although the monies are commingled, TRS-4 monies are commingled with TRS-1, TRS-2, and TRS-3 monies for investment purposes, we account for TRS-4 separately. And we're doing that because the state is to have no responsibility for any unfunded liability that TRS-4 might develop, okay? The board, under the law, the board is provided certain tools that they can apply should the funded status ever drop below 100%, that they could apply these tools to get the funded status of the TRS-4 back to 100%, okay? And if the funding status were to drop below 90%, the board would have to have no option but to apply those tools to get it back to 100%. I'll tell you, TRS-4 is a well-funded plan. Our actuaries don't anticipate it going below 100%. In fact, we're above 100%, well above 100% funded for the foundational and that's the pension side, retirement annuity side, and the supplemental, the savings side, are both extremely well funded. So don't see that happening, but it's very important. The Commonwealth of Kentucky has cut off future liabilities for unfunded, or future responsibility for unfunded liability with TRS.
Before you go to the next slide, Senator Mills had a question. I figured we better get there before
yes, sir.
Deep in the numbers.
I'm behind the poll here. On the membership data page, just curious, and I think maybe Senator Byrd might have the same question. We both looked up at the same time. That number, 75,511.
Yes, sir.
Contributing members, and then the non-contributing members, the 74,000. Are these names, is this database shared with KDE or any other agency to send something and contact them to see why they're not teaching, or is there any research on that?
There has not. That we've not been contacted about any of this information. Certainly, and until we had this meeting and compiled this data, we weren't quite sure about how large that number was going to be. It's larger than I thought it was going to be. So
doesn't
it was
it seem like
surprising
that
to
would
me.
be a good pool to ask people to go back in the teaching profession?
I certainly think it is, because that's a lot of people. And again, most of those 74,383, most of those are certified classroom teachers who got a degree in education and taught in the classroom.
Mm-hmm. I was just curious about that.
So I'm not sure you anticipated Senator Berg's question, but she has one, so please go ahead.
I just want to clarify, there's no way to be in this non-contributing category and be actively working. You can't choose not to contribute
No.
if you're working.
No, if you're
So
working,
this is all people who are not working.
correct.
Thank you. I wanted to make sure of that.
Thank you. Go ahead, please.
Okay. In this previous slide, of course, we were covering the different account types, and this breaks down the number of members, active members in each account type. Pretty self-explanatory, but this is as of June 30th, 2024. You see TRS-1 there at the top. As of June 30th, 10,270 active members. TRS-2 had 14,572 active members. TRS-3, our largest, had 36,134 members. And TRS-4, and this is pretty amazing too, because again, this tier just began for individuals who became members on or after January 1st, 2022. It's already up to 14,535. So about the same as TRS-2. And if you were to include, and we don't have that data, but if you were to include everybody who's already entered the school year this year, starting, this school system year, as active members, that number would be even higher than TRS-2, quite a bit higher than TRS-2. So, and our actuary is saying about another 9 years, 2033, about half our active members will be TRS-4 members. This is active member payroll. And again, I'm going to focus on the column to the far right, 2024. These numbers are pretty consistent. You can see all along the way, slight increases every year. But for 2024, total active member payroll was $4,067 million. Okay, this is a breakdown of active member payroll by average earnings, high earnings, and low earnings. And at the top, we have average earnings. These include, of course, teachers, administrators, and universities, these numbers. So we see for 2024, the far right column, average earnings, $56,319. High earnings, $371,375. And then low earnings, $1,867. So these numbers, particularly low numbers, are going to include sub and part-time work, employment. So that's why you're going to see some of these lower numbers. Okay. This is a breakdown in $20,000 increments of contract earnings for our members. And you can see under $20,000, we have 4,189. Between $20,000 and $40,000, 11,779 members. Between $40,000 and $60,000, 29,282 members. Between $60,000 and $80,000, 20,071 members. Between $80,000 and $100,000, 7,496 members. $100,000 or more, 2,694 members. Average age of this population is 43.1. Average service credit, 10.03. And I think there's a couple of reasons why that 10.03 seems a little low for someone with 43 years of service. Two reasons. One, we looked at our average age at which members enter the system. This was several years ago, so this may have changed a little bit, but it was 31, as I recall. And we know a lot of people become members as soon as they graduate from the university, their degree in education. Most of them do. So that told us that we have people coming in right after college, and we have people coming in later in life, well after 31, what we call the mid to late career hires. So that's one reason that's skewed. And then also, this would include members providing part-time and substitute services. Part-time can be significant. Substitute, we have full-time substitutes, although most aren't. So that's another reason why this number seems a little low. Retired member annuities. Again, these are in billions, fairly consistent. This is total payout, fairly consistent over the years. And again, as of last June 30th fiscal year, the payout was $2.243 billion in retirement annuities.
And before you go any further, Senator Hickman had a question. Chairman Hickman.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just on the contributing member distribution and the category $100,000 or more, naturally we would think superintendents would be in that, but there's only 165 school systems in Kentucky. So what type of jobs would be paying over $100,000? Is that restricted mainly administrators or?
Yes, it would be largely administrators. You know, you might have, well, not might, you'd have some folks in the universities who make over $100,000, and that would be included there as well.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, so we just finished up the total payroll slide. So this breaks down member annuities on a little more granular level. We'll start with that top row, average service at retirement. These numbers are a little bit lower because they include two things, return to work. So return to work accounts, a lot of those folks don't even get 5 years of service in, you know, but not many get much more than 5 years. Some do. Some go back and work as many as 10 years or so, but most are having shorter service credit for that second retirement account. So that's one reason these numbers are skewed a little lower. And also, as I mentioned, we just have a lot of mid to late career members who join the profession later in life. So we've got that. Final average salary, let's look at just the right column here, focus on it. Final average salary in 2024, $68,328. This is skewed a little too. We have these final average salary records captured on and after July 1st, 2015, when we did a total replacement of our IT system. It gave us new capabilities. So we don't have final average salaries for years prior, or the time period prior to July 1st, 2015. So everybody who retired then with lower final average salaries are not reflected here, you know, so it's skewed higher, it's inflated. Average annualized payment. Again, we're focusing on the far right column for 2024. $41,395 is the average annualized payment. I always like to point out too, you know, of course, we are a Social Security replacement plan in addition to providing a retirement benefit. So by virtue of that, our retirement is going to be a little bit more to take care of not having the Social Security. High annualized payment. Focusing on the right-hand column, 2024, you see $250,026. I don't know who this person is, but I do know something about them. I know this individual was highly compensated throughout their career wherever they worked, and I know they worked a long time. And I've got a couple of slides later, I've got a graph will show that. But it's to get that kind of retirement, you have to have the high salary in your life, and you have to work a long, long time. And then low annualized payment, $3.36. I'm saying that's a reciprocity account where someone may be subbed a day with TRS. Okay, this is a distribution of retirement annuities in $20,000 increments. So I won't go over all of these. I'll go over some of them, but under $20,000, you know, 10,456 retirees. Our biggest column, most of our members are between 20,000 and 60,000. You see the 20,000 and 40,000 is 13,519, 40,000, 60,000, 20,000, 819. And then you have it drops, you know, for the 60 to 80,000, drops even more, 80, 100,000. And we do have 847 people making $100,000 or more. So this graph, bar graph, shows a distribution of our service retirements. The blue bars represent the number of members and that are making those $10,000 retirement annuity increments. And the kind of yellow line there, gold line, that zigzags upwardly from the left to the right, represents the average number of years of service for each of those groups. Two things stand out. One, again, you can see here very visually, graphically, that most of our members, 12,796, are in the $40,000 to $50,000 range. The next highest range is the 30 to 40,000 with 9,180, and the next 50,000 to 60,000 with 8,023. Then it drops off quite a bit after that. And again, this is a benefit that also replaces Social Security. The other thing to note is that there are 5 people on the far right who are making over $200,000. And again, I don't know who they are. I know they were highly compensated. And if you'll look to that gold line that goes from the left, lower left to the upper right, you can see their average years of service are just about 45 years. Now that's a very actuarially sound retirement allowance. Yes, it's big, but we're going to be paying out pension and medical benefits for a lot shorter period of time for someone who works that long. Plus, we've had those contributions all those years to earn investment income that'll help pay for that benefit. And this is not just how this retirement annuity works. I mean, this is how a 401k plan works. The longer you work, the more you save, the more you put into it, the more you're going to have at the end. This is let's see, 82% of teachers receive $60,000 or less in retirement annuities. 1.6 receive more than $100,000, and on average, those worked a decade more than retirees receiving $60,000 or less. So again, it's deferring your retirement, it's working longer, and that's why you have the higher retirement allowances. That concludes my presentation. If there's any questions about this or anything else, please let me know. Happy to take those questions now.
We do have a couple of questions, Senator Higdon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And on the retired member annuities 5-year data, when you talk about, and it's not numbered, but anyway, the high payment was $250,000 for. Is that an average with all those lower paid individuals, or is that an actual number?
That's an actual number.
Okay. All right. Mr. Chairman, go ahead, and I'll come. If you would come back to me.
I will come back to you, sir. Representative Tipton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I do have a couple of questions. Bo, always good to have you with us. Talking about the retired annuities and average years of service, I know that teachers get a benefit the longer they teach, specifically if they get to 30 years. Could you explain to the board what advantage there is to a teacher to get to that higher level of years of employment on their retirement and their final compensation?
Yeah, so there are several carrots in the retirement system to encourage people to teach longer, which is usually good for them because they're really building up a retirement allowance where they need it, so it'll take care of them for the rest of their lives. And also it's actually good for the retirement system as well because we're paying out benefits for a shorter period of time. So for our members, under statute, for our members who work more than 30 years, that retirement factor that I talked about earlier of 2.5% per year, for those years worked after 30, it goes to 3.0%. And, it's something. It's an acknowledgement to them that, hey, you keep on working, you're going to do a little bit better. We save money, you build up your retirement.
Isn't there also an advantage in high 3 versus high 5?
That's another carrot. That's a big one.
Okay.
So for our members who retire with 27 years of service or more and who are at least age 55, their retirement allowance is calculated on their 3 highest salaries as opposed to their 5 highest salaries. And we have a slide that I believe we've shown this board before, the age at which people retire, by year. And every year, the highest bar on that bar graph is age 55. So that shows that because for TRS-1, TRS-2, and TRS-3, they can retire with as few as 27 years. I mean, they could graduate from college and retire at age 50. And we have people who retire before age 55, but most are hanging on because when they come to the retirement system, our counselors are counseling them, yeah, you can retire now at age 51, but if you wait 4 more years, defer retirement, you can build up your retirement allowance by using the high 3, and it works. It works. Our second highest retirement age at which most members retire is age 60, when they're eligible for an actually unreduced retirement benefit because they don't have 27 years.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I've got a request to Bo and then a question, if that's all right.
Yes.
I was also interested in that data on the non-contributing members. I could not write all those ages down in number of members, non-contributing members. Could you just send that to us? I think that'd be important for us to have, and I believe that'd be an important conversation to have folks over at KDE, KASS, KASA, and look at how maybe that is a potential pool of people who we might get re-engaged in the classroom. So,
and I'm sorry, Representative Tipton, you want me to provide what on that?
The numbers of non-contributing members by age.
Okay.
The ones under 30, 40, 50, 60.
Okay.
And I don't want to speak for Senator Nemus, but to kind of follow up his question on retirement reemployment, our KPPA folks alluded to, and they are correct, that there are different guidelines and rules. Could you kind of go over so our knowledge, so people understand the differences, what the rules are in TRS for retirement and reemployment?
Yes, sir. So, yes, they are different. We do share similarities in that we both have to be compliant with federal tax law, and so that's the reason the IRS has said there cannot be a prearranged agreement between a retiring employee and their employer to return to work. They say that is not a bona fide retirement. So that's rule number 1. Also, breaks in service are required from the date of retirement before returning to work. And those breaks vary depending on the situation. For individuals going back to work for the same member, they have to have a 12-month break in service, if they're going back full-time for the same employer. For retirees who are returning to work for a different employer or for the same employer part-time, a 3-month break in service is required. Also, with the exception of something called the Critical Shortage Program, which I'll explain just real briefly in a second, retirees are limited in the compensation that they can earn when they return to work. We call it the daily wage threshold. If they retire with 30 or more years of service, that is set at 75%, and if it's with less than 30 years of service, it's set at 65% of their last annual compensation. So they've got that. There is a critical shortage program that allows districts limited ability to use a limited number of retirees and pay them any amount they want to. But those are the highlights of the TRS return to work.
I believe those members also they do earn a second retirement.
They do.
Starting being as a Tier 4 in the Tier 4 system.
Correct.
Couple of follow-ups, if I may, Mr. Chair. You referred to the federal tax law. Of course, KPPA, they said the 30 days return to work. You all are at 12 months for same employer, 90 days for different. I'm sure both agencies are following federal tax law recommendations. Why do we have this discrepancy between KPPA and TRS? I know you're following what legal counsel tells you, but it's always puzzled me why these two pension organizations are giving different advice to their members on this.
That's a good question. So the IRS, and this is a little confounding at times, but they've told us they expect a bona fide retirement, or that retirement is voided. It's not voided, but there are tax penalties because they haven't had a bona fide retirement. They haven't really separated from service. They're getting in-service distributions. So they've told us that, and if you were just to allow that system-wide, then your whole plan is subject to disqualification. And by disqualification, I mean disqualification under Section 401A of the Internal Revenue Code, which allows our members to make contributions to the retirement system on a tax-deferred basis, so more money in their take-home paycheck, which is an important tax advantage. So it's very important for us to make sure that we can satisfy the IRS should they ask us, are you allowing non-bona fide retirements to occur? We want to be able to say no, okay? And I won't go into it. The IRS is not a paper tiger. We had an issue with them. It lasted 5 years, and we had to go back finding records to the 1950s. And ultimately, the state's attorney general agreed with us that we were doing things correctly. and the IRS withdrew. But it's not a paper tiger. So, but we spend a lot of time. We're worried about that, okay? And we spend a lot of time and money with our tax counsel, outside tax counsel, to make sure we're compliant. We feel that because teachers, a 1 month break in service is not a break for a teacher, because that's shorter than summer breaks in the school districts, that is not a break in service for our teachers. And I know that KPPA, CERS has some classified staff in districts. It's our comfort level. And the IRS, what's confounding with the IRS is, other than saying you can't have a prearranged agreement, they haven't given much guidance about what is and what is not. You have some individual cases they've ruled on, but they haven't come out and just set rules that you have to have this long of a break in service, and it's enough, okay? In fact, if you have a prearranged agreement, even if you had a 6 months break in service, they'd say, no, it's not enough. So we're not getting a lot of direction from the IRS. So we are just being conservative about our breaks in service. We discussed them in detail at length. I remember these days with our outside tax counsel. They agreed that these were very reasonable, and again, IRS hasn't considered a break in service is sufficient, but just about every pension plan in the country is going to have a break in service to show good faith to the IRS that we are not, as a system, retirement system, allowing non-bona fide breaks or retirements to occur.
I believe that during the COVID situation of teacher shortage and that issue, the General Assembly did pass temporary legislation that allowed teachers to have a 30-day break of service.
That is correct. During that emergency situation.
But that situation has now expired, so now they're back to the 90. Also, on the critical shortage, I believe it expanded the number of critical shortage teachers could be hired from 1% or 2 in the district to 10%, and now that's back to the 1% or 2 teachers in the district who could be hired under critical shortage guidelines.
That's correct. 1% of the number of active TRS members employed by the district, or at least 2 per district.
Okay.
There is a Department of Education statute that allows a school district to request the Commissioner of the Department of Education, with approval by the Executive Secretary of the Teachers Retirement System, to exceed that 1% or 2 retirees per district if the statewide quota on critical shortage has not been met. The statewide quota on critical shortage, the total number of possible critical shortage positions throughout the state, has never been close to being met. It's probably not even 1%, so there's plenty of room there. Certainly, retirement system recognizes districts needing to be able to strategically recruit retirees for some certain hard to fill positions. I know the retirement system would be glad to approve any request, subject to approval by the Commission of Department of Education for additional critical shortage positions.
Temporary provision, were there teachers who returned to service with less than 90 days of service?
A few.
And to this point, there have been no issues with the IRS?
No, there have not. Now,
time will tell.
and they may not. That was an emergency situation.
Sure. Okay. Thank you, Bo.
Senator Nemes, you have a question or comment?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Representative Tipton. But I want to clarify one thing, and I may have to get this individual to ask direct questions on their specific thing. But a teacher that retires and does not go back into teaching, so they're not going back in with the same employer, but may go into an employer that is with the Kentucky retirement system, do they have more than a 30-day wait?
No, if they go to an employer that is not an employer of Teachers Retirement System, they don't have a wait.
Okay, so they could go in, not Teachers Retirement, but the Kentucky retirement system.
If it's not the employer, but if it's going to a TRS employer, say, for example, they retire as a teacher in a school district, and they want to go back in a classified position in that same school district covered by CERS, County Employees Retirement System.
But if it's not in the education, say it's in the county clerk's office.
Then no, there's no.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Senator Byrd?
Thank you. I just want to make sure again that I understand this correctly. We're using 3 months before you're eligible to rehire and be part of the system because we want to make sure that we've documented an adequate length of retirement. And it sounds like these are numbers like that can be altered. What do other states? I mean, these rules apply to everybody. What's the average nationally that people are using?
Senator Burke, I'm afraid I don't have that information. I'm not sure. I would say it varies across the country.
So we don't try to get that information before we make a decision for our own state?
Probably at the time when those breaks in service were implemented in 2002, 22 years ago, I think probably we were looking at what some other states were doing, but I'm sorry, I don't recollect, what now, today. But those were seemed reasonable within the ballpark, and in working with our outside tax counsel, who represents many other public pension plans across the country, they felt that these were reasonable to protect the retirement system.
And I understand, and being reasonable is good, but we're also faced with a significant workforce shortage. So could we have the numbers of what other states on average are requiring?
We could, I guess, look around, what some other states are doing.
If everybody's trying to fulfill the same IRS requirement, I would think it would be fairly uniform, would it not?
Well, again, because the IRS is not given bright line details about what is and what is not a bona fide retirement. They've not even said breaks in service work, but they are a good faith attempt to show, most pension plans do this, a good faith attempt to show that we're not allowing sham retirements, okay? I will say too that on this issue of recruiting retirees as teachers, we have data that we've shared that shows that teachers are not going back full time. So reducing the breaks in service, if you could, or doing away with that daily wage threshold, or doing anything to make it more attractive to retire and return to work as soon as possible, you were not seeing teachers who are eligible to retire and return to work coming back full time. That's a very small percentage. Just about everybody's coming back subs, and then there's a lot of part-timers, but mostly it's subbing. So if you make those return to work rules too easy, you're going to end up trading, because we saw this before the new return to work rules were enacted in 2002, you're going to see trading full-time active teachers who are going to say, look, I can retire, I can earn my pension, and I can also now go back to work. Before 2002, they're going back to work 100 days at any salary, their full salary. They were earning about 115% of what they were earning before they retired, but now they're only working 100 days. There's no lesson plans, and the number of people retiring as soon as they got 27 years was skyrocketing. And that was the trend we were seeing, as alarming the Educational Professional Standards Board, because we were trading full-time teachers for part-time teachers, and today that's one of the concerns that we would have. I think the education community would have that. And I've heard just anecdotally, I've heard it from superintendents, I've heard it from retired teachers. Most are not interested in going back full-time. And when they're retired, maybe they're going to go back to sub, but that's about as much as they're willing to do.
I would still like those numbers, sir. Thank you.
Okay, we'll find some numbers for you. Be glad to do that, Senator Byrd.
Thank you. Senator Higdon, Chairman Higdon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Bo, back on the TRS account types, TRS 1, 2, 3, and 4. And I know you're sick and tired of hearing me ask about sick days, but TRS 1, could you tell me the sick day that can carry forward to retirement on each one of these tiers?
So TRS 1 and TRS 2 are the same as it applies to those lump sum payments for unused sick leave at retirement and being used in the final average salary for retirement purposes. There really aren't any limits on how much they can accrue, and in the districts, most districts give the same number of sick leave days for teachers. It's 10 days a year. There are two that don't. One gives 11, one gets 13, I think. But most districts allow those unused sick leave days, well, they do, not all districts allow those unused sick leave days to roll over into future years, okay? And then some allow annual leave days or personal days to convert to roll over as well. So, not all do that, but so 1 and 2 are similar. TRS 3 is different in that it caps not the number of days that the district can pay the retiring teacher for, sick leave days that the district can pay the retiring teacher for, but it caps how many days can be used for retirement purposes to 300. And there are people who have retired with more than 300 sick leave days. They are people who worked a long time. Typically, there are people who worked a long time and who are fortunate and never get sick. In TRS 4, it's just gone. I mean, the use of sick leave for final average salary is gone. So it's, and again, that's now our, with this current school year we're in now, that's going to be our second highest membership account type is going to be TRS 4 and growing every year. So it's with TRS 4, you're going to see the cost of sick leave start slowly trending down over coming years.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, may I continue? All right, Bo, back again, kind of the same question on leave payments. What leave that can they accumulate in these tiers to carry forward toward retirement?
Yes, I mean they will accumulate leave over the years. So
is there a limit on it though? Is there what is the requirements? Is TRS different? TRS 1 different than TRS 3? Is there?
I don't think there's no difference between 1 and 2 about rolling over from years. Is there a cap on what you can accumulate? I guess is what I'm asking.
Because I guess the reason
2.
I'm asking that, I just kind of understand now that leave payments are paid at 100% of whatever the day's worth. Sick days are paid at 30% of what they're worth. So I just curious how many days can a TRS 1 employee carry forward toward retirement, and a TRS 2 carry forward toward retirement, TRS 3, and I would assume TRS 4 there's no it's annual leave, I guess is what I'm talking about.
Oh, but annual leave.
Annual leave.
Okay. Most districts have policies where unused personal days can roll over into sick leave, and that will roll over from year to year, so that those added rolled over personal days that go into convert into sick leave days, there's no limit, 1 and 2, and then when they roll over to sick leave days, and they will those personal days that became sick leave days will be compensated at 30% of the daily rate that the teacher is earning. So then we would get that lump sum payment, or they would get that lump sum payment 30%. We would get retirement contributions on it. There's a cost, of course, that the state pays for that, as everyone here knows. And then with TRS 3, there's not going to be any limit on personal days rolling over into sick leave days.
Back to the annual leave, though, I guess annual leave is primarily for administrators?
Oh, okay. There's also, so administrators do get annual leave. The teachers, they have like 3 personal leave days a year, typically, or 2 or 1. And administrators who are or other year-round employees of the district who work 12 months a year, they get annual leave, okay? And there is a difference of the tiers here as well, and that is for tiers 1 and 2, they can be paid at 100% of their daily rate.
At what percent?
100% of their daily rate for TRS for up to 60 days of annual leave, vacation leave. And then that lump sum payment from TRS 1 and 2 then is applied to the final average salary. For TRS 3 and TRS 4, they cannot use any payments for unused annual leave vacation leave for retirement calculation purposes.
Okay. Now, if you would, I want to look at the this one that you showed me, the highest paid. The $371,000. But just to make it, I guess, an easy one to do, would you get back to I'd like to know what some administrator that made $350,000 a year and accumulated the 60 days of annual leave and 300 sick days. What would that do to that retirement? And I guess, and I'll email this to you because I'd like to see that. So I'll make sure that I get it
Yes,
to
sir.
you. But I'd like to see what that would, how much does that enhance that $350,000 retirement? And also, I assume the district doesn't pay for that. That rolls over into the state liability as far as that's included in sick days, right?
Yes. For most of that, yes, it would be. We would get contributions on those lump sum payments, retirement contributions, but the actuarial cost of that, yes.
Okay, I'll email you that question and give you exactly what I want on that, if you don't mind. And,
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And as we are wrapping up, I do have one more question for you real quick. Hopefully it won't be as complicated as these guys who are so knowledgeable. On your last slide, you got a data point about 82% of retired teachers receive $60,000 or less. That $60,000 number, for some reason, just kind of sticks in my head as I don't know, maybe an emotional point or something. I'm not sure exactly why it stuck out with me. But can you, is it in the slides here, or can you get for me what the average years of service and average age is at the $60,000 point?
Yes.
Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Because, and I maybe should have prefaced the entire meeting today with this statement that the purpose of these questions, for the reason for asking these questions and these presentations today was because most of the time when we're here for these board meetings, we're talking umbrella numbers, we're talking big numbers, we're talking trends and that sort of thing. I was hoping to personalize it a little bit and just get a feel at the individual level what these numbers mean to a person. And again, for everybody that presented today, thank you for the effort because it was a short lead time and a lot of data, and I very much appreciate that. But if you could just get that data point, you can email it back to me or whatever you want to do. Yep. Any other questions or comments for Bo before we get close to wrapping up? I do have one administrative note for anyone who is intending to present bills during the next session, next regular session. We have a requirement for PPOB if it's a retirement. If the bill is referring to retirement, we prefer or we'd like for you to come to PPOB ahead of time before you go to committees, just so we can provide some information to the committees. So, having said that, if you have any bills that you're thinking about for the regular session, it would definitely make things better if you would, at the next meeting, be prepared to present those bills and contact us about it. As Chairman Mills just mentioned, it must be vetted. So with that, any further business? And one last administrative note, the next meeting is scheduled for November 13th. I'm going to assume that it'll be 2:30. Any further business for the board? Seeing none, we are adjourned.